Today, I got 5 players you should trade for, 5 players you should trade away, and 5 players whose roles are changing. This is buy or sell. We're still pushing towards that subscribe goal of 1,000. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and we appreciate it a lot. First guy that I want to get into as a buy low is Derrick Henry. So you can see here 15 carries, 33 yards and a touchdown. I kind of bailed you out with the touchdown here. Didn't have any receptions in this game. You see he still dominated snaps. That's not really what this one is about. But I do want to say that for a month now, he's been pretty bad. And now we're looking at a game without Lamar Jackson and a bye the week after. So it's not looking great for Derrick Henry over the next couple weeks. So if the player in your league that has Derrick Henry is 1-4 or 2-3 and really trying to push to win these next 2 weeks, I would definitely throw a low ball offer at Derrick Henry. See if you can get him for cheap and get him for the stretch one once Lamar's back, once this offense looks a lot better. So I definitely be looking at Derrick Henry. Was hesitant to put him on here for a while now, but now that it's a lot of games in a row where he's been bad, I do think that there's a chance that owner will be willing to sell. Next guy that I want to talk about that is a buy high is Jacory Croskey-Merritt. So we finally saw the breakout here. 14 carries, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had multiple receptions for 39 yards. So I do think this was the true breakout. And I wanted to highlight that he actually did play a lot more snaps than he had in past weeks as well. He had 28 snaps to Chris Rodriguez's 15, who is his main competition on early downs. Jeremy McNichols still involved in the passing game, ran more routes than Croskey-Merritt, but that's going to be the case, right? Well, that's not really the role that I was concerned about him taking over. It was if he was splitting with Chris Rodriguez. So definitely great to see him handle the lion's share of the touches this week. If somebody has Bill, I don't think that this is going to be a situation where all of a sudden they're going to be willing to just trade him for anything. But I do think that he is going to be extremely valuable moving forward. First game with Jaden Daniels back off injury. And so overall, somebody that I'd be buying high. Now, what would I be trading for? I don't entirely know, but I do think I would be trading for him as a top 20 running back. So if you could put David Montgomery together with a receiver and go get him, I would definitely do something like that. DeAndre Swift, that level of running back, I would definitely be looking to move up into Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Now, this might be a situation where the player who has this has been waiting on him for a long time. So maybe you have to go and get him with a better player. Like if you have Javonte Williams, who's been playing out of his mind, maybe you trade Javonte Williams to get Jacory Croskey-Merritt and somebody else, right? We're about to talk about a couple other guys, and another good receiver like Stefon Diggs or like a Cortland Sutton, something like that, where you get 2 good players for Javonte Williams. And I think that would be a reasonable swap because I do think that Bill is going to be good for the rest of the season. The next guy up that is going to be a buy low is Woody Marks. So obviously we were huge on Woody Marks. The whole industry was huge on Woody Marks last week, and he disappointed in a major way. I mean, he only had 7 carries for 24 yards, didn't record a reception. And you see in the snap share here, though, that he still did play more snaps than anybody else. He had 27 to Nick Chubb's 24. Dameon Pierce got 16, but that was mostly in mop-up duty because they were absolutely giving it to Baltimore. So, they won 44-10 in that game. So I wouldn't read into Dameon Pierce too much. But super, super unfortunate to see. However, you do still see the role here, right? 12 routes run, 27 snaps. And so I do think that there are better days ahead for Woody Marks here. So if somebody played him, I know I played him over Rico Dowdle in a league. Matt played him over Rico Dowdle against me in our league. And so obviously there's going to be some owners with a really, really bad taste in their mouth about Woody Marks. So if you can throw out a super low ball offer, a receiver for Marks, you need some running back help moving forward, I think that you could do worse than Marks as we get further into the season. The next guy that I want to highlight as a buy high is Stefon Diggs. So I just mentioned him in a possible JCM trade. Diggs comes out here, revenge game. So that's obviously a huge part of this. He was obviously fired up for this game. The fact that they won, he was almost crying in the post-game interview. But, he just absolutely dominated targets in this game. 12 targets. Nobody else had more than 4, 10 receptions, 146 yards. And, he only played 30 snaps, though. So he got 12 targets on his 30 snaps. That's just an absurd snap share. So, that I don't know how much that's going to be able to continue, but I do think as the season rolls on that he's going to continue to play more and more and more of the snaps. You see, he led the team in routes run. So the snaps he was out there, he was running routes. And so, I just think that this is something where he showed that he was healthy. He was getting open down the field too. He had a couple 30-yard receptions, bailed out Drake May a bunch of times in tough spots. And so, the healthier he gets, the better he gets. I think this is going to be somebody that you really want on your teams. I think even in 2 wide receiver leagues, he's likely going to be a starter moving into the second half of the season. And then the last buy low for this week is going to be Quentin Johnston. So you see the 4 for 40, definitely a down game, only 4 targets. Keenan Allen dominated the targets in this game. Well, Ladd also had 7. Hampton had 6. It kind of spread it around a little bit, but I do still think Quentin Johnston's role is very safe. So, you see here, he led the team in routes run. He led the team in snaps. And so I do think overall that he's still going to be very good. Now, it is tough because the Chargers offensive line is so beat up that Herbert looked out of sorts against the Giants, and then he looked out of sorts against Washington this week. I mean, they were just bad passing the ball. So I don't know that they're going to have a choice for the next few weeks. Now we're going to get into some sell highs. So the first guy that I want to highlight as a sell high is Cam Skattebo. I feel like this is going to be an unpopular opinion because so many people like watching him play, think he's been very good, and he has a receiving game role, which is relatively rare, right, for running backs nowadays. And you see here in the box score, he had 6 catches, 45 yards. So that's a pretty valuable role. 15 carries. He played 50 snaps. He ran almost 30 routes. So overall, I think it's a strong role, and I think is something that you can try to capitalize on now. The chances that you drafted him late or picked him up off the wire are very high. So I do really think that this is somebody that if you can cash in value for now, it's something that you should be doing, because Tyrone Tracy is going to be coming back. And I know I'm a Tyrone Tracy apologist. So, Matt doesn't necessarily agree with this take, but I do think that Tracy is at least going to cut into that work a little bit. We see 3.9 a carry against New Orleans. That's not the greatest. And Tracy is definitely a solid receiving down back. So if they're going to split at all, maybe Tracy comes in and takes the Devin Singletary role that you see right here, 6 carries, 2 targets. But I do think it's going to be a little bit more evenly split. And even before Tracy got hurt, he had 9 touches actually to Cam Skattebo's 2 snaps. So is he going to take over? No, I don't think that. I think that ship has sailed. But I do think that there's an opportunity here where if he takes an additional 4 carries and 2 or 3 targets, right, and then Cam's role is more 12 carries and 5 targets, that's not going to be as valuable of a role as he currently has. So if you can sell him off of this huge workload for back-to-back weeks and get something that, sell him to somebody that's down in the rankings. It's like, hey, this guy can help you the next week or 2 here with this huge role, and try and get something that maybe long-term can help you more. I would be looking to do that, especially if you need wide receiver help at this point in the season. I feel like wide receiver as a position has been so bad. So if you can get any of these receivers that have been playing well, maybe try and trade up into a Rome Odunze, add a receiver off your bench to Cam Skattebo, try and get a Odunze, something like that. I think that could be potentially really a good deal. The other guy that comes to mind maybe is Jalen Waddle. I know the Dolphins offense is not the best, but I think you can maybe trade Skattebo and get Waddle plus a running back from that team. Maybe you get like an RJ Harvey, who we'll talk about in a second, in addition, and try and build out your roster if you've been dealing with injuries, that type of thing. So, I wouldn't be selling low, right? I'd be selling, make sure you get good players. You're going to get a starter here out of this type of trade. The next guy I want to highlight here as a sell high is Jordan Mason. So 13 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Honestly, that is very, very good production against Cleveland. So I wouldn't worry too much about how that looks and the fact that it wasn't necessarily as big of a game as we maybe were hoping for. But I do think with the impending return of Aaron Jones that this role could get a little bit murky, and he's getting most of the work here. So I think it could be a situation, again, next 2 to 3 weeks, you sell somebody on the fact that Jordan Mason is a starter and you can maybe get a 1-for-1 trade, you get a receiver, maybe you need some tight end help, and you can trade up into one of these good tight ends, trade up into Tyler Warren, something like that for Jordan Mason. I think, it's maybe going to be a little bit harder to trade Mason than some of these other guys because his role is in doubt as we look forward to down the season. So, not that he's going to completely go away, but it's not going to be what it is currently. So if you can get anything for Jordan Mason at this point, I would be starting to push that hard on teams that are 1-4, 2-3 that need this immediate help, especially if somebody had Amarion Hampton and was down in that 2-3 range. They are going to be itching to get a running back. And if you can get Jordan Mason onto their roster for somebody off of their bench or in their flex considerations, that's definitely something that you should go and look to do in your leagues. The next guy on the sell list that I'm going to be suggesting to sell low on is RJ Harvey. So I'm not necessarily convinced that this is going to change very much. I know he got some added work last week, but then this week, right back to 20 carries for J.K. Dobbins, only 4 for Harvey. He did get 3 looks in the passing game, but the bigger issue to me here is that Tyler Beatty was back and he played on third down. So he actually outsnapped and had a lot more routes run than RJ Harvey. So I'm not sure what exactly we can be expecting here from Harvey, because if Beatty's going to be playing on third down, that's going to really limit what RJ Harvey can even contribute because he's not going to be on the field enough. So if somebody in your league didn't notice that and you have RJ Harvey and you can add him as like a down the road piece, right? Somebody in your league's 4-1, 3-2, maybe 5-0, and they want RJ Harvey for second half of the season potential, I'd be willing to let him go for very little as a kicker, basically, in the trade. So this is super unfortunate. I really thought RJ Harvey was going to have a good role, good season, but that just isn't playing out at all. That's not going to be the case in the foreseeable future either. So definitely be looking to get RJ Harvey off your teams if you can get anything for him to help you win. Because if you have RJ Harvey on your team, I can't imagine that you're doing super well. I mean, maybe you're 3-2. But, and if you are 5-0, 4-1, and you have Harvey, you can sit on him, but I would even be looking to trade him away to maybe one of your top competitors in your league and see if you can get anything done there via trade. Next player here on the sell high list is Tony Pollard. So he had another strong game, right? 14 carries, 76 yards and a touchdown. He played significantly more than Tajay Spears. He had 3 receptions as well. So maybe you can have the mindset of like, hey, Pollard with Spears back was still really good. This is going to be a strong role here. You can still take Pollard while Spears works his way back. Now, I wasn't even expecting Spears to play this week, and he still came out at 17 snaps, 10 routes run. And so I do think that his role is going to expand over time. And with that, Pollard's role is going to take a step back. We know that this offense isn't great as it is. They were going up against Arizona. They ended up winning this game because of miscues on Arizona's end. But overall, I do think that Pollard is somebody whose arrow is going to be trending down as Spears gets healthier. So, again, surprised this week that he was active, but over the coming weeks, I do think that Spears is going to be more and more involved, and that's going to lead to Tony Pollard's value declining. So if you can, again, trade him to somebody that needs running back help, especially quickly, I think that's worth doing, and you can maybe move down even into like a running back and a receiver, or just a 1-for-1 with a receiver, or you can use him to try and move up to like use him as like, hey, I'll give you Pollard with Sutton to move up to, Rome Odunze. I hate to keep going to Rome Odunze, but that's kind of the guy I feel like you can maybe get because he was on bye. Maybe somebody forgets that, not forgets, but maybe somebody tempers expectations a little bit on how good he's actually been through the first 4 weeks. The next guy I'm going to suggest to sell high is somebody I've been harping on now for a few weeks, is Calvin Ridley. So last week I suggested that maybe he could even possibly be dropped. He did get dropped in a few leagues, but he's 71% rostered as of this recording. But this is the ideal situation to try and trade him, right? He's coming off of 5 for 131. He had 10 targets. He didn't play more snaps or run more routes than Ellick, but he did dominate in terms of production. So I do think that there's a selling window here that I think you have to take advantage of if you have Calvin Ridley. Start putting those trade offers out today, because I think maybe somebody that's in need of receiver help, again, receiver is in such a bad position. that he can be somebody that they think of is a viable flex option, especially in your 3 wide receiver leagues. So go out and send those trade offers. I'm still not super confident in this Tennessee offense at all. Even after a solid showing through the air, you see the 265 passing yards. But yeah, I think this is a perfect opportunity to try and sell him. And I know, if he's out there in your league on the waiver wire, you're probably not going to get anything for him, right? You can try and add him to your team and see, but if you've been holding him in your 3 wide receiver leagues, I have to expect that he's been getting held. So go and try and trade him. He's a perfect guy to try and move up running back, right? Maybe you can add him to Alvin Kamara to try and get Breece Hall or something like that. Now let's get into looking at a few expanded roles. So all eyes were on the Arizona backfield after Trey Benson went on injured reserve last week. And I think it's pretty safe to say that we got a pretty conclusive answer on who the lead back is going to be, and that's Michael Carter. So we see him 18 carries, 51 yards, and a touchdown. Obviously, DeMarcado had the huge play, but he unfortunately fumbled on the one as he was going in. So that was, obviously disciplined play, but not really indicative of the roles, right? I mean, you see in the snap share, Michael Carter played 39 snaps to DeMarcado's 19. With 18 routes, even 5 targets and 5 receptions that I put up there. You see 5 for 22. So this was all Michael Carter. Now, he was pretty inefficient. So I don't know that this is going to be the split moving forward, but I think for next week, you can start Michael Carter for sure if you weren't already this week as a James Conner / Trey Benson replacement. I think that the volume is excellent, right? Anybody that's going to get 22 touches or 23 in this case is going to be worth a start. In your half PPR leagues, he's going to have a role in the passing game as well. So I think we got a pretty conclusive answer this week. It's not like they split evenly or anything like that. DeMarcado, third down back, got a few carries, had the explosive play, right? I mean, it was a short yardage play and he broke through the line and just was gone. So, if it had been Carter in that exact same situation, maybe he would have been able to score. But, I think overall, it's pretty clear Michael Carter, the guy you want here. Next guy who also continued to expand his role is Kendre Miller for the New Orleans Saints. So we saw him start to creep up in snap share last week, and then this week he actually had more carries than Alvin Kamara. So Kamara still is continuing to work on all 2-minute drill, passing downs, and goal line. He's got all of the snaps in those situations, but between the 20s, when they're running the ball, Kendre Miller definitely has carved out a significant role here. So you see Kamara still out-snapped Kendre 37 to 26, still significantly more routes, more targets. I put Kamara's 4 for 28 up there in the box score as well. So he was pretty involved in the receiving game, which is what we expect. The other thing I want to mention here about Kendre Miller is if you can add him still, I think he's a very good waiver wire add. There's definitely a chance that Alvin Kamara gets traded this year. I know there's been some rumblings about the Saints players potentially being available. So I do think that with that possibly looming until the November deadline, I think it's November 4th, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on that one, but it's sometime in early November. And so as the trade rumors and deadline heat up, I think Kendre Miller is somebody that if you can afford through bye weeks and injuries to hold him is somebody that I think could be very interesting over the second half of the year if Kamara does get traded. Everybody was already all over this next player, so I just have to involve him though because the expanded role was so clear, and that's Darren Waller. Last week he only played 11 snaps. He did catch 2 touchdowns, heavily involved in the red zone, so that was obviously great to see in his first game. And he rocketed up to 70% owned, so everybody was all over that. But it was really good to see him expand his role further, get to 32 snaps and run 27 routes, 5 targets, 87 yards and a touchdown. I thought he looked excellent. And without Tyreek, it was kind of like, who's going to step up here? And obviously Waddle had a great game as well, but it does seem like Darren Waller can have a significant role here as long as he's healthy. So, a season away from the game, dealt with a preseason injury, but back looking good now. And I think Tua is going to continue to look his way in an offense that badly needs weapons in the pass. These next 2 expanded roles are for deeper league players, but I did want to highlight Isaiah Davis here. Only 1 carry for 5 yards and he had 3 catches for 28 yards. But I was kind of thinking maybe Breece Hall was going to absorb some of that Braylon Allen role, but it wasn't really Breece Hall that got more snaps. It was Isaiah Davis who kind of took over that whole role. So you see more of a two-headed monster here, 50 snaps for Breece Hall, 33 for Isaiah Davis. They both ran the same number of routes, both had the same number of targets. And again, 8 targets for a Jets offense led by Justin Fields is a lot for the running back position. So I don't know how much that can continue. In particular, they did throw the ball a ton in this game. But, I do think that this does lead to Isaiah Davis being a pretty ideal handcuff here for Breece Hall. So if Breece Hall were to go down, I do think that Isaiah Davis is going to have a ton of value. One of those guys where you're going to be talking about 30-wit fab on. And so, that type of player I think should probably be owned, and especially with as strong of a role as he's showing already playing on third downs. I think it's pretty easy to go and get him if you have Breece. The last guy I wanted to go over here is a very deep dive. So for very deep leaguers, Dynasty League guys already know this guy, but it's Pat Bryant of the Denver Broncos. So you see the box score, and he doesn't show up anywhere, right? Cortland Sutton, 8 for 99, and you see Troy Franklin, 3 for 35. I feel like that's pretty low for the number 2 target, right? And so what I think happened here is Franklin played 44 snaps, but Pat Bryant actually played the third most snaps at 40, ran 23 routes, kind of played in front of Marvin Mims, even though Mims still did have 5 targets, but Mims only 2 for 10 in the game. And so as a third round player, Sean Payton comped him to Michael Thomas coming out of the draft. And I do think if he's going to get run as the third wide receiver, that it's only a matter of time before Bo Nix starts to find him. So as much as I do like Troy Franklin as a player and as a fantasy asset for the beginning part of the year, if Pat Bryant's role is going to continue to trend this way and continue to expand, like I kind of hope it does, I do think that he might have a second half breakout here in a way that, he's probably more talented than Troy Franklin, as much as we all like Franklin. So just keep an eye on Pat Bryant. This isn't somebody that you have to jump in on right now. We might get him on Beat the Waiver Wire type of thing, just because if the role does increase and he does get more snaps in 2 wide receiver sets, the sky could be the limit here if he does step into that number 2 option in the passing game eventually, right? Obviously, you're looking at the box score, you're saying, dude, he didn't have a catch. There's no way that's going to happen. But just keep an eye on him. Just a name to know. If you don't play Dynasty, you never heard of Pat Bryant, look him up. He was a 3rd round pick. Look up everything that Sean Payton has had to say about him, because it has all been extremely positive. And now we're starting to see it result in some playing. And then finally, we're going to go over the waiver wire here. Talked about some of these guys, but just wanted to highlight everybody. Dylan Gabriel stepped in as a starter. He did not do great, but he looked pretty solid in his first start against the Minnesota Vikings defense. That's pretty tough going across the pond to London. So, overall, got a tough matchup this week, but he's got a couple easy matchups coming up after that. So if you're stuck at quarterback in a Superflex league, definitely want to go after Dylan Gabriel. He's only 11% rostered. I do expect that he's going to look better and better as he continues to get his starts under his belt. At running back, Michael Carter, already talked about him. He's only 59% rostered, so that's going to go up to 100, I would guess, this week. If he's still available in your leagues, make sure you go and grab him. Kenneth Gainwell, another guy that's at 58%. I definitely thought he was going to be more owned, but I think because he was on bye this week, maybe it was just kind of pushed down, but I still think he's worth grabbing just in case Jaylen Warren is still banged up, or just in case his huge game helped him carve out more of a role. So overall, Gainwell, I think, very much worth the ad, especially if you're the Warren owner and you just want to lock in that backfield. Gainwell proved that he can step in Warren's absence. Kendre Miller, we already talked about him. I think he's a great ad, especially for long-term if Alvin Kamara gets dealt. And then Hassan Haskins, right? We didn't talk about the Amari Hampton injury, but that's super unfortunate. And if I had to go in on one of these Charger running backs, it would be Haskins over Kamani Vidal. So that's why I put Haskins on here. At wide receiver, Romeo Doubs was on bye this week. Again, another one of those guys that only went up to 62 from 45. So it just seemed like the increase would be a little bit more. So I kind of cheated on our 50% rule, but definitely somebody that if he's still out there in your leagues, look for this week. And you might be able to get him at a discount in terms of fab if he didn't get added in your leagues after his 3 touchdown game going into his bye. So, maybe you only have to throw a single digit bid at him to try and get him this week. Kendrick Bourne, somebody that I would put a $0 bid on if he's still available in your deeper leagues, just in case Jennings and Pearsall are still out. So there's absolutely that chance. And there's a clear connection here with Mac Jones. And I also think it was super encouraging to see him get such high praise from Kyle Shanahan. I was very happy to see that. Next guy is Isaiah Bond. I feel like we've been beating the drum on Isaiah Bond for like 3 weeks now, but he continues to have his role expand, and Tillman's injury is only going to help increase his role more and more. He led the team in targets at the wide receiver position. Obviously, David Njoku had more than him at the tight end position, but I do think Bond is somebody that, rookie to rookie connection maybe helps continue to elevate his value. He jumped up to 26% rostered, so I think people are starting to catch on to Isaiah Bond. Tight end had some pretty interesting performances this week, so definitely if you need help at the position, this is a week to be aggressive on it. AJ Barner, I was kind of hoping this was going to be the Arroyo show, but that hasn't come to fruition, mainly because AJ Barner has been just a beast in the red zone. So he scored twice more this week. You see he's tight end 7 on the season, and it's because he's got 5 touchdowns already. So he's only 3% rostered. If you're stuck at tight end, you could definitely do worse than AJ Barner. Mason Taylor, somebody we recommended last week. He's a really, really good player, I think, and it's a good fit. And he's the number 2 in the passing game. Now, he had this huge game, right? He had 9 catches. He had almost 70 yards. A lot of that came in the fourth quarter when they were down big. So if you buy into the fact that the Jets are going to be bad, maybe that comes to fruition a little bit more than I'm anticipating. But I would definitely think that Taylor is somebody that's good to add. Just temper expectations a little bit because his last 2 weeks have been phenomenal. And then Theo Johnson, somebody that's super interesting because he had a red zone role where he scored a goal line touchdown and a 15-yard touchdown. And with Darius Slayton going down to injury now too, the wide receivers are down to basically Wandale in that room for the Giants. So Theo Johnson, somebody that I think young, good tight end, good draft capital last year. So I definitely think that he can kind of take over some of these targets that are going to be going around in the Giants passing game if Jackson Dart is going to continue to target him. He scored twice this week, and so I think you could do worse than Theo Johnson in those deeper leagues. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next one.